All right, friends, welcome, welcome. I'm just going to move my camera over because my face is on the side and I want to be able to see you guys better as we talk today. So I was thinking today as I was thinking about some of the feedback I got from the homework. Everybody's laughing at our term terror barrier. They're like, oh my gosh, that's the worst way to describe it. It does, but also the best, right? Because it feels so bad in the body. I want you to know that is not my term. I got that from Bob Proctor. I think I said that last week, but that's what he calls it. Our body feels so terrified of these new goals, which is so fascinating because it's like self-inflicted terror. I talked about this before. I'm like, if somebody else did to us what our body does, we would say they're gaslighting us. We would call them manipulative. We would think they were like the most terrible humans alive, but we do it to ourselves, right? Like we dangle this goal in front of us. And then our body's like, yes, that's what we want. And we get all excited and we start reaching for it. And then our brain's like, no, absolutely not. That is not available to you. You suck. You're the worst person in the world. You can't have it. Then we're like, what? And then we're like, go hide in the corner. And then we feel terrible in the corner and we're like, oh, dangle the goal out here. Well, we really want it. So we'll run toward it again, right? And then our brain's like, isn't that nice? Doesn't that sound great? And then nope, it cuts us off again. Nope, you're terrible. You suck. You can't have it. We would call that very manipulative, gaslighting, terrible behavior, but we do it to ourselves. I recently heard this lady talking. Actually, she was on social media and she said, hey guys, I want to start working out. She was looking for advice. She said, I want to start working out, but the problem is every time I work out, my muscles get really sore. She said, I need some help so I can work out and not have sore muscles, because if I get sore every time, I'm going to have a negative association with working out and I'll never be able to keep up with it. I was like, what? I teach a fitness class a couple times a week, and well, mostly only once a week now. But anyway, I know that feeling sore, that pain, that hurt is an indicator that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing to accomplish the goal and result that we want to accomplish. So I want you to be thinking about that. When you bump up against that terror barrier, when it feels terrible in your body, I want you to think about the sore muscles. That is what we want. That is what we choose. All right, friends, as we get started today, before I jump into today's material, which I promise we've got a lot and it's going to be so fun, I would love for somebody to share how their homework went last week, because I don't want to talk at you the whole time. This is supposed to be a mastermind and a group. So tell me what came up for you when you started exploring the emotion that you feel most often or have felt in your past, and maybe what circumstances were surrounding it or what insights you got from it. I know whatever you have to share, you're probably sitting there reluctant. I don't know if I should or not, or I don't know if I want to. It's going to help somebody in this group. So I invite you to just go ahead and unmute yourself and tell me what came up for you before we dive into the rest of today's content.
Hey, Rhonda.
Yes. Hi, Kara. Good to see your face.
Good to see you too. Sorry I wasn't able to be on the entire Zoom call last time. This time I have somebody picking up my kids, so that is allowing me to come on at the beginning. So interestingly enough, I was kind of just paying attention over the last week, given the homework assignment last week, and I was thinking about it, mulling it over, as like observing what kind of patterns of things were difficult for me, and didn't all come together until today when I was sitting down. Actually, usually it all comes together when you take a nap and you finally like have light bulbs go off and all the subconscious like kind of thoughts come to the surface finally, and like everything's tied together. But recently I've been working on doing a marriage seminar, which is kind of like a virtual group of lectures with a licensed marriage therapist. And a lot of it has been me doing it and listening to it, because they're like hour and a half long lectures. And I also have been doing a lot more stuff at home for therapy for myself and for my children. And I guess I've had been realizing, and it all came together today, that I've been feeling resentment and just more so like guilt that I wasn't doing other things instead of doing spending this time developing my marriage instead of doing like physical action items or to-do items on my list. So I was looking, just for example, what I wrote down for my resentments were my efforts to do therapy for my marriage and my kids is adding a huge emotional weight to me and time and energy, like an emotional energy. And I feel like it rests on me solely. So unless I set aside some time on a date night to do the marriage seminar with my husband, and he's been very like willing to listen to me, like give him the recap. And we actually did manage to find like 45 minutes to listen to the seminar on our last date night, which was amazing and very unusual, highly unusual to do something like that on a date night. But we were doing like an earlier date and we had like this extra time. We're like, okay, well, we only have this time to do something. So we didn't go anywhere. And then, sorry, I'm like giving a lot of information. So you can stop me at any point. But I was just feeling like this invisible weight that wasn't necessarily, I didn't know how to have my husband acknowledge that all of this is going on. And so that I didn't feel guilty, for spending the time recovering from all that emotional time, because I have to spend time recovering from it. For me, I have to sit down and read a book to kind of just decompress, just a fictional book. And I just feel guilty. And I felt, like my husband didn't understand. And I don't know how to approach that. So I'm going from this, I want the goal to be that we're on the same page and that I don't feel guilt for spending time developing my family. And also maybe I want more support. I don't know where I'm going with this, but those are kind of the goals that are forming. And I'm feeling like I have those goals and we've been working on talking about our invisible like work that we both do that not each other may see. And I just feel like my subconscious just keeps on bringing guilt. But, well, he's working from home today. What did I do? I spent 2 hours cleaning our kitchen. So then when we had someone come over to look at the countertops, to measure them, since we're upgrading our countertops and they had to come and measure it. And I was like, okay, I have to clean everything. So we cleaned it all. And I spent 2 hours cleaning the kitchen because I wanted it deep cleaned. And I realized my husband doesn't understand what it means to deep clean. He thinks it's just wiping the counters off.
And
He
he
doesn't
doesn't
realize
care.
yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
thing.
So
He
like,
doesn't
how
care.
am I supposed to help him know all the things that I'm doing and feel like validated? And that
Okay.
subconscious is coming to me like, you aren't doing enough.
Great questions. First of all, I want you to see that you're doing this therapy, marriage therapy, to gain a closer relationship with your husband and family, and you're recovering from it. And your resentment about what it's costing you is doing the opposite. So that's just really good information, right? And then you said, and then I have to go recover and I feel guilty. And I want, the goal is to not feel guilty. What if it's okay if you feel guilty and you just make that mean you're a human in a marriage with another person, with a bunch of some little people around you, and you can feel the guilt and be okay with feeling the guilt?
Yeah. I mean, I know that's something I was just learning about today, is that when there's change happening for either me or my husband in our relationship, or even on an individual basis, that there's going to be discomfort, that you have to embrace that discomfort.
So
that's hard.
The fact that you're feeling guilt does not mean that something's wrong with your marriage. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It means there's something in your subconscious that doesn't quite line up with it. And you're saying, oh, if my husband could just validate me, if he could just understand what it means to this or that. But what if we turn inside and say, not how do I solve the problem with my husband, but what part of me is this causing to feel uncomfortable? So am I feeling uncomfortable because I feel disconnected with my husband? Am I feeling uncomfortable because I feel like I should be spending more time with the kids? Am I feeling uncomfortable because I just don't want to feel guilt? And I think that feeling guilt is going to cause other problems. When we can turn inside and listen to what the subconscious tells us without trying to immediately fix the outside, we get to learn so much about ourselves. And that, when we do that from the inside, then we don't have to fix all the little things outside because we gain that closer relationship with ourselves. And Kara, I think everybody on the call knows exactly what you're feeling, by the way. Like, this is not a judgment or condescending. We have all felt that way. My husband joined the call today. Just ask him. We both feel that way in our marriage. The thing is, though, if we constantly have to change the people around us, then we're going to be so disappointed because husbands don't understand and wives don't understand, right? But if we know what is causing the discomfort inside of us, if we use an emotion to learn what's going on down here, then we can have our own back. Then we can validate ourselves. So that is the big thing as we go through this class, learning to hear what comes up, like the guilt Kara was talking about, like the resentment she was talking about, learning to feel that and move in closer to it instead of saying, hey, how do we get this to go away? Let me get everything to line up so it will go away. So we're going to talk more about that today, I promise. And I'm going to show you some things you can do about it. So keep bringing that up. And on our last call, we're going to do a lot more coaching, but thank you for bringing that up, Kara, because it's a perfect example of when we're trying to do something new, even something new that's positive, like create more harmony in our marriage. It brings in the guilt. It brings in the resentment. We want that to go away, but actually stepping toward the resentment and guilt and learning causes us to learn more about not just ourselves, but the relationship. And then we get to create true connection. True intimacy is when we face the discomfort and we're willing to sit in it as we connect with the goal. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I know I haven't given you the answer of how to do that. That might take more than a couple minutes on the call, but keep going with this. You're on the right track. Thank you so much for sharing that. Did anybody else have a thought? Oh, you're so welcome. Did anybody else have a thought before we start getting into the new content today? All right. I don't see a hand coming up, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing, but thank you, Kara. That was beautiful. It's the perfect example of what we talked about last week. When those new ideas come in, we start to incorporate them. Then we feel terrible in our body because our lower brain is saying, hey, your husband should understand if you want to be close and connected. Hey, your kids should get more of your time if you want to have a close connected family. This doesn't work, right? And then our body feels terrible. And that's when most people quit. That's the terror barrier. I feel resentment. I feel guilt. This isn't worth it. I'm out. Let me just go back to being who I was before, which, by the way, feels terrible too. It's just a familiar discomfort. So that's why we trade that in. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again as we talk about the next lesson today. We're going to get a little bit more woo-woo here. Oh my goodness, sorry, my Zoom meeting is showing up here. I apologize. I'm going to move that out of the way and show you my slideshow. Okay, so here's what we're doing. We are creating an emotional relationship with our goal today. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm going to talk to you about it in 3 ways. And I have that outlined down here. We're going to talk about an emotional relationship in terms of faith, in terms of quantum physics, and in terms of neuroscience. Now, don't get scared. Don't check out on me. I am not a quantum physicist. I am not a neuroscientist. You don't have to understand this at the deepest level. You just have to hear my Reader's Digest version that I promise I will simplify and it will make sense. Okay, so let's start with the quantum physics side, because to me, that sounds the most scary. I want to talk to you about something called the observer effect. And down here in the bottom right-hand corner, I have given you just a few resources that you can go look up more of this if you want to learn more. If you look on YouTube and Google, you will find tons of it. But for today, I'm going to narrow it down to a few small things. Basically, what we need to know about the observer effect is, number one, everything is energy. Absolutely everything. Your body, the chair you're sitting on, the walls around you are made up of energy. How do I know that? Because they will start to decay. Like, they are moving right now. Your walls are moving. You can't hear it. You can't see it probably, but they are decaying. They are collapsing. Your body is made up of energy. When you get angry, that energy transmutes into something different. When you feel joy, that energy transmutes. It has a different frequency and a different vibration in your body based on those emotions that we talked about in week 1, right? So you could be having a joyful day. Then somebody comes in and says, hey, your bank account got hacked. Your balance is now not only zero, but negative $20,000. Okay. So your lower brain thinks that you're financially fine. Then somebody gives you a circumstance that says, hey, no, you're not okay, right? Those don't measure up. Oh, my screen sharing. Somebody's trying to get in. I am so sorry, guys. This is crazy town today. I've got a new computer and it's not working the same. So when we go back to that old thought, like my bank account's fine, I'm financially stable, and then somebody gives you this new idea that, hey, no, you're not, then we feel anger, we feel resentment, right? We start to feel those emotions, those ideas and thoughts not lining up, and your energy will transmute into something different than it was 5 seconds ago. Now, I could not find the resources on this one, but I've heard it from a few different people. Bob Proctor and a few different articles reference that DuPont scientists have calculated how much potential energy is in a human body. And they say it's worth about $85 billion. It could fuel the whole world with energy, the whole United States, I think. And then it talked about a factory, like for a few months, like a large factory. One human body has enough potential energy to fuel that factory. So I'm not going to say that is fact, but suffice it to say, it is factual that we all have a lot of potential energy, and it's mutating and what is that word that I just said? We are using that energy in different ways, right? We're transmuting it throughout the day. So physicists have discovered that the particles that make up atoms are also altered by a human viewing and observing this energy. So this is in the Joe Dispenza book. If you have read Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, this is going to sound familiar. If you have that book, go back and look it up for more specific details. But basically what that means is when an observer focuses their attention on the specific location that electron could be found, only when the observer is focused there will the electron appear in reality, right? So basically, if we want to see these electrons, if these quantum physicists want to observe matter, they have to look for it first. Energy responds to our mindful attention and becomes matter when we observe it. We can use our energy to change our frequency as well, right? So if we're feeling joy, our energy is going to have a different frequency than if we are feeling anger. So let's go back up to what does that have to do with observing energy? I want you to think about if your mind is focused on two different things throughout the day. We might focus our mind on our loving partner, like a new relationship. Do you remember when your relationship was new and it was fun and exciting? You got those butterflies? Let's think about if we focus on that, how we might feel. And then I want you to think about focusing on an old relationship that really made you angry, right? Like you're seeing it, you're milling it over in your mind, you're replaying it. I want you to really think about that, how that changes the energy, the vibration in your body. It is a very real and literal thing. A lot of people call this woo-woo and like hocus, and some people call it spiritual, which I actually think that's a great way to describe it. But a lot of people think this is just crazy town. It is very real. It's very factual. It can be measured. So this is the quantum physics aside. And I want to take any questions you have after we get through this a little bit more. But to go ahead and go back to the neuroscience, I want to compare it to the quantum physics as well. So remember last week we talked about potential. We have a divine potential. We have thoughts and ideas that might be out there. We have desires that we feel like are just within us, dying to come out. When we think about our potential, we go ahead and create it intellectually, right? Like, oh, I think I could try this. Maybe I could reach for this goal. This might be possible for me. That is when we start to view the idea in our mind. We start to get that picture, like the observer effect. That's how this lines up right here at the top, right? And then whenever it comes into focus, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in just a minute. When it starts to come into focus, if we can start to see ourselves living into this potential. So for example, if we had a goal to create a better marriage, to create a relationship with the partner that we're with currently, that we just love and enjoy, we might start seeing ourselves walking hand in hand. We might start seeing ourselves having regular date nights. We might start seeing in our mind all these ideas of what we think this potential relationship would be like. When we can see that, if we can feel it in our body, that's where we start to bring that into effect, right? That observer effect. We start to create that experience for us. Now, like we talked about last week, the moment that happens, if it's not in alignment with what we've been thinking, our old thinking, our ex thinking, that's when it's going to feel terrible in our body, right? So today we're going to start talking about how do we cope when we have this idea, this thing that we can see, and sometimes we can feel excited about it and feel into it, but it's not in alignment with our old thinking. Like, what do we do with that? We're going to talk more about that today. I'm going to show you how this lines up with faith, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I feel like this is the meat of our conversation today. So as you can see, I have different phases of a seed. Some of you really, if you can't latch on to the quantum physics and the neuroscience is starting to make sense, but you're not quite sure, some of you will be able to latch on to faith more. Whatever explanation works for you, I want you to go with it as we create your goal. So here we have a packet of seedlings. If we compare that to quantum physics, basically the moment you can start to see your goal in in your mind, it's like creating a seed. If we think about the neuroscience of it, the moment we have an idea about what is possible, what is our divine potential, what is that true desire, the moment we have an idea, it creates a seed. Now, some of you know that have a belief that faith is believing in things that you can't yet see. When we start to believe in a potential, even if we can't see it, we are creating a seed of faith. Now we know that when we have a seed, the way we get that seed to maturity, to become a mature plant, is to plant it, okay? So if we want to talk about it in quantum physics, when we plant that seed, we start to see the details of it vividly. That's how we plant it in the observer effect. We see the idea, the goal, and then we start to see the details. If we want to talk about neurophysics, we start to see ourselves in the goal and start to create an emotional response in our body, right? So if we're going back to the example of a marriage, we might feel the way it feels to touch our husband's face, like maybe the scruff of his beard, like face toward him and touch it. We might smell the smell of his cologne, right? We might hold his hand in this vision and walk together facing whatever comes, and we might feel what his hand would feel like. You use your senses to get emotionally involved in this vision. So if we want to talk about planting the seed with faith, we might start to see and feel what we believe is our divine potential, what we believe is our God-given talent, right? When we start to feel in our body, we get emotionally involved. We create an emotional relationship with our goal. And that is how we plant the seed. Now, after this seed is planted, that's where we're going to start to nurture this seedling. None of us would create a seed or go buy a seed, put it in the earth and forget it. Well, maybe some of us would. I have had several seedlings die. But when we're creating a goal, we want to make sure we nurture the seedling. How do we do that? We see it daily. Basically, we're repeating these steps over and over. We're seeing it daily. We are feeling it in our body daily. We are experiencing the combination of visually seeing it in our mind. Remember, that's how we collapse energy. We collapse matter into reality. We are feeling it in our body to create an emotional connection with our goal. And then we are combining that daily, making time. I think I've told you guys before, or maybe I haven't on this call. I literally set a timer on my phone, especially when I started this. Nurture the seedling of your goal daily. Now, after we start to do that, we're going to go over here to the tools. We have to use the tools. So when we plant a seed, we don't expect the next day for that seed to grow. But when we're trying to accomplish a goal, sometimes we do that, right? Like we want that goal and we want it now. And if we try it for a week or 2 weeks or however long we said we were going to try it and it doesn't come up, we might be tempted to say, forget it, it didn't work. I want you to imagine just for a moment that you planted a seed and you covered it with the soil and you nurtured it, you fertilized it, you watered it, you did the daily, weekly things. And within, let's say, 4 weeks, there was no fruit on that seed. And you're like, well, crap, this was a bum seed. You pluck it out of the ground and throw it to the side. Then you go get a different packet of seeds. Rinse and repeat. You do the same thing. And this time, let's say you wait 3 weeks and you're like, man, it looks the same as the last one. Crap. And you pluck it out of the ground and you throw it again. That's what so many of us are doing with our goals. There is a gestation period for goals, just like there is a gestation period for humans, for elephants, for tomato plants, for seeds, like all the things, right? I know the gestation period for a human child is about 9 months. So I know about how long to wait. I don't know the gestation period for me to create the marriage that I'm trying to create. I don't know the gestation period for me to create the dollar amount that I want in my business. I can guess, but if I keep thinking I know and I'm plucking those seedlings out and casting to the side and watching them wither and wilt and planting more, all I'm doing is wasting time. Now, you could pull your seedling out and focus on another seedling if you're like, I thought I wanted tomatoes, but I just tried my neighbor's tomato and that thing tasted terrible. I actually think I wanted to plant strawberries instead. If you're consciously deciding what you want and you'd like to change your goal based on what you believe because you've had experience with it or you're seeing it more clearly or you have more information about it, fine and good. But if you are changing the goal because you think it's not possible, because you think you don't know how to grow seeds, or you think it's taking too long, you're doing yourself a disservice. Gestation period for goals is very, very important for us to realize. So we don't pluck them prematurely. When we start feeling terrible in our body, we want to really think about doing our thought work. If you've worked with life coaching before, you know what thought work is, right? What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? Is that serving me? We want to do the emotional work, right? Like Kara was saying earlier, I feel guilty or I feel resentment. Do I know how to sit with guilt and resentment long enough to learn from it? Do I know how to process guilt and resentment so it doesn't sabotage the rest of my day or the rest of my week? I've been there before when you feel crappy and you let it continue to mill over in your brain and it's just like a crapshoot in there and then you're angry at everybody. We want to be able to process those emotions. We also move toward those emotions. We learn our patterns like, okay, when I'm not seeing the results, this is how I react. Or, man, I'm having trouble with visualizing. Or, man, I'm having trouble with feeling. That helps us to magnify our relationship with ourselves. I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment and talk a little bit more about this. We think we want the goal because of what the goal is going to give us, right? We think we want to make a certain amount of money in our business. We think we want a certain relationship with our spouse because it's going to be so great to have that. I want to offer you that the only reason any of us ever really want a goal is because of how we think it will make us feel. Are we going to feel successful? Are we going to feel satisfied? Are we going to feel happier? I want to offer you that the steps that we have to take to lean into our emotions, to learn more about ourselves, to feel confident in processing emotions are actually what will allow you to feel happier, more confident in yourself, have your own back, validate yourself, all the things, right? So I had a client. She is, excuse me, an artist, like brush to paper artist. And she said, all I want to do in the world is to be self-actualized. She's like, I want to put out into the world what I feel in my body. And the way I do that is through my art. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, isn't that what we all want? We want to go out into the world and be who we are. We want our interactions, our coaching, our parenting, whatever, like our marathon. We want that to be an expression of who we are, our photography, whatever it might be. The funny thing is, when we start to reach this goal, all these terrible emotions come up in our body. And if we're not careful, what we will say is, dang, every time I try to be self-actualized, accomplish what I was put here to accomplish, all these emotions try to sabotage me. I want to offer to you that all those uncomfortable emotions, all those obstacles actually are the opportunity for you to be self-actualized. When you have to face those head on, when you have to learn about what's inside of you, when you have to heal, when you have to feel, that is the process of becoming self-actualized. Isn't it ironic? All we want to do is be comfortable and be free to be who we are. These big emotions come up. We think they're sabotaging us, but they're actually saying, hey, this is the way. This is the process. Those emotions are handing you on a silver platter what you actually want. It doesn't feel good. It feels terrible. And we're like, no, just kidding. I don't want that, right? I really want you to think about that for a moment and tell me what your thoughts are. I would love for somebody to share what it feels like in your body, or what it feels like when you think about the obstacles are what is giving you your goal. And I see some questions coming up. How much time do you set on your phone? That's a good question, Bonnie. When I started with about 5 minutes at a time. And I'll tell you more at the end of this call, or maybe next week. Like when I started, I didn't even care what I was visualizing. It didn't have to be the goal. Like I just wanted to feel love and gratitude on purpose in my body for 5 minutes a day. That was like my first goal. And then after I learned how to create love and gratitude, sometimes I would think about a newborn baby. Sometimes I would think about being in nature. Like it doesn't matter what, if I could learn how to create love and gratitude, then I could bring pictures into my mind of whatever I wanted. Feeling it in your body is one of the key components. When I work with my clients, that's what we do. Like now, I can pretty much feel love and gratitude anytime I want to, because you memorize it in your cells, like in the cells of your body as you practice that. That's a really good question. Who has a thought about your discomfort delivering the goal that you actually want? How does that sit with you guys? Oh, Sarah, I see your hand is raised.
Hey, so it's a little bit different than the way you just asked the question, but what just happened in my mind while you were talking is I saw two columns in my mind. I just wrote them on a paper. One is like what I thought I needed, like what I thought like the timeline of my goal would be, or whatever. Like this is what I need. I could visualize it. And it was also, by the way, the same thing as what I thought would happen. So it was like, that's what my mind was like, this is going to happen and this is what I need. This is how it's going to go. And then the other column was, but what did happen, or what is happening now? So there's a, like, that's different from what I thought and what I thought it should be and what I thought it needed to be. And then I thought, okay, if kind of relating to what you were talking about, if we're looking sort of backwards, what if we're saying, I guess this is what you're teaching, that what has happened, so this is the process. So these like hard things. And then it turned into like, so I'm buying into the idea that this is what I needed. This is what I need, is these hard feelings pushing through. And then I just saw in the future, because I haven't gone there yet, but I'm working through this with you, that what I needed to happen, which is what is happening, then can come into what I really wanted to happen all along, which is what you're saying. And it just like, my chest was ballooned up with like, oh my goodness. So this thing that's like, feels like the rock pushing on my chest turned into a light balloon, like expanding out, like I want to like explore and expand. So
that was beautiful. Actually, what just happened is what we talked about in the beginning, right? It's like this rock, this pressure, the energy in your body feels really uncomfortable. And then you see it in a different way and it transmutes and expands into this joy and excitement. That's a beautiful example. And yes, the product or the goal that you want in your physical reality is just a beautiful byproduct of the work that you do along the way to get there. And I want to take this back to the stick figure, the higher and lower brain too, right? It's like when we are doing this work, stepping toward the emotion, that's where we're calibrating the old thinking with the new thinking, right? That's where we're getting into frequency to match the energy that is a higher vibration, right? Like this all works together. We can call it neuroscience. We can call it quantum physics. We can call it faith. We can call it growth, line upon line, precept upon precept. It does not matter what you call it. What we're doing is seeing what we want, doing the work in the middle to get there, and then tuning into the vibration, the frequency where we want to live as a human that then calibrates with the goal, right? Once your old thinking and your new thinking sort of come into harmony, your goal in reality is just a beautiful byproduct. We've talked about this before. Let's say that something happens and I don't live long enough to see my goal in reality. Would I rather live miserable, frustrated, in familiar discomfort? Or would I rather tune into those emotions and learn and grow and gain confidence in myself to tolerate my own emotions, to be able to spread love, joy, and gratitude anytime I want? Which would I prefer, right? Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else have a thought about that? I see 2 more questions and we will get to those, but I would love to hear what anybody else has to say. So Nikki says, what do you think about having more than one goal at a time? I think it's totally fine to have more than one goal at a time. I think it depends on how you want to approach it. I do think when you're beginning this, it's easier to focus on one goal at a time, just because the nature of the brain, the way the brain works, I think it's easier. And like we talked about last week, Nikki, once you accomplish or embody Nikki's words, she messaged me last week and she's like, I just call that embodiment. When our old thinking and our new thinking come into alignment, I have been hesitant to ever say I'm embodied because there's always something new coming in, which goes right along with what you're saying, right? When we accomplish one goal, our brain will be like, okay, this is great. But because the brain is hardwired to be dissatisfied for very long, a new goal, a new desire will come in and we'll just calibrate that. So when you're starting out, I think one goal at a time is beautiful. But if you're like, man, I'm rocking this and I'm loving this, and you want to focus on more than one goal and you can hold those visions and that emotional relationship with more than one goal, try it. Nikki, I bet you can. What did you want to share your thoughts about that, Nikki, or maybe experience of trying that?
Sorry, you should experience trying. What do you mean, more than one goal at the one time?
At the same time.
Yeah, I guess I haven't really used the same kind of focus really intently about I get getting into the frequency. So I've been doing it recently, like, you know, I've just been more interested in the woo, and I don't do it daily. I don't do it as a practice that's a routine. So I would say that, yeah, I don't know. I think it is possible. I think it is possible. But what you say as well is that as you're learning it, because it's a meta skill, to be able to sink deeper into that frequency. So I might just try and do it more regularly, like you mentioned. Yeah, I think that would be really good. Thanks, Wanda.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Sorry I put you on the spot. You asked the question, and I think it's a great one. Somebody asked something similar last week, and I think a lot of us are like, we have so many goals. We have so many things that we're working on. Like, where do we start? How do we choose? And my overall answer to that is, it doesn't matter. Just pick one. I even like to start with really small goals sometimes, just so I can learn, like you said, Nikki, the meta skills of feeling on purpose. Bonnie said, so love and gratitude are the feelings that you use to create your goals. So Bonnie, if you look this up, you can actually Google this, like, what is the frequency or vibration of love, the emotion of love? What is the frequency or vibration of the emotion of gratitude? Actually, gratitude and love have the highest frequencies. So that's why I like to focus on those first. It's not always what I feel. Like, sometimes I want to feel compassion or motivation or whatever. But yes, I always start with my clients, and you can do this any way you choose. You guys are not my clients. You can do it however you want to. I'm just giving you information. I'm trying to raise the value in the world. That's all I'm doing with this class. And because I love it, I'm so passionate about this work. But so emotions of gratitude and love have the highest frequencies. So of course, I want to train my body to feel those. When I started out, I would do it morning, midday, and evening. And I will say to you, and some of my clients have felt this too, when they try to do it in the morning, for some reason, after they slept all night, whether it's because of things they've dreamed about or things they were thinking about when they went to bed. And I found this too, when I would wake up initially in the morning, sometimes it was much harder to feel love and gratitude than it was at night. So just play with it. Just see what happens for you. Everybody, every person and body is different. I practice feeling love and gratitude every single day, multiple times a day though. And after I did that for a few weeks, like I said, you guys, literally your body memorizes it and you can go to it so quickly. Now, if you've just had some tragic accident or somebody you love has given you some terrible news, that might not be the time to practice it at first. Give yourself some grace. You don't want to be a sociopath. You don't want to be a robot, right? Like we want to feel what is real. But in the day-to-day, when we have that time, we also do want to practice on purpose. Great question. All right. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions about the content that we taught on the slides? Anything that didn't make sense to you or anything that you're like, intellectually, I kind of get it, but could you explain it a little bit more? I really want to make sure you get the bones of these concepts and the way they all work together. The woo-woo, spiritual, the neuroscience, the quantum physics, the faith, it all lines up beautifully. And I just want to make sure that we answer all the questions of that.
Rhonda, I have a question.
Yes. Tell me.
Okay, so if the why is like our intellectualizing, our thinking through the new thing that we want, and then the process of our subconscious, we're coming aware of our old patterning, the belief systems, everything that we have that kind of is like the 90% that's running us anyways. So the process of calibration, when you said before, it's like poking holes in it, making friendship with the understanding it, you're just saying coming in at all the angles, not necessarily making it bad because it's part of you, but like understanding it and relationshiping with it until it starts to loosen up and you can still carry that self-love, but you just transmute that from like a limiting thing or a sabotaging thing into like the thing that actually supports the goal or like the new you that's coming into realization. Something.
Yeah, that is so great that you brought that up. In fact, I think coming at it with self-love and compassion is the only way to do it. If we're coming at these emotions saying, I don't like you, I need you to hurry and calibrate, we're coming at it already from scarcity, right? And you are in the vibration of that discomfort that you really, or you literally are trying to avoid, right? You're like, I don't want to feel discomfort, so go away. I'm in discomfort, right? You're trying to create something besides discomfort from the feeling of scarcity and all those icky emotions, right?
Yeah, right. And also what you resist persists. So if you're like, I don't like this, I have to override it or change it, then you're actually creating on the back end like 10 times of that you're going to have to redo rather than like, let me work with this and then actually change the matter or something. I don't know, change it so that it's not like you dismiss that and brought in something new. You literally changed the old into the new.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
a little out there, but it's like what my mind is saying. Like, if you're going to make friends with it, you can't discard. You just literally like raise it up into a new, you resurrect it, you like make it, you elevate it to something that's really supporting where you're going, where you're headed.
Yeah, you said it earlier when you said I was having this feeling of pressure, right? And this, and then when we talked about, making friends with it and really leaning in and learning from it, it just opened, right? It was the same energy in your body. You literally just transmuted it from that pressure to that excitement or whatever it was. I'm putting words in your mouth based on what you
Mhm.
told me, right? But
Mhm.
it's the same energy that's there, right?
Yeah. I
It
just love
reminds-
the thought of using the raw material of the quote unquote negative and not having to just be like, thank you for your time, you can move on now, but more being like, oh, wait, with this, I'm just going to add some understanding to the mix. And my new recipe then literally becomes a new, I don't even know what I'm saying. And the recipe changes, it like changes form into this beautiful thing. It's just really helping me because I know self-love has to be there, or else you just are, you're hating a part of yourself that's kind of an automatic process. And I just know that there's like back end problems that come with that. And so I just love the idea of the more negative that comes up in friendshipping it. You're not saying I love you, you should stay how you are, but you're saying I can use the building blocks of this to elevate.
Totally. I'm going to butcher it, but there's a Byron Katie quote, and she talks about how somebody asks her, well, how do you let go of your limiting thoughts? How do you let go of them? And she said, oh, I don't let go of them. I love them and appreciate why they're there in the first place. And then they let go of me, right? That's what we're doing. There's another example that I love to use. And I was actually talking with a couple of my clients about that this week. Like, you guys have probably seen that show, The Amazing Race. And I want you to imagine if here's you and here's your partner, right? And you've got all these obstacles and you've got all these beautiful awards or beautiful goals waiting for you. And people are going to give you, I don't remember how much money it is because I actually haven't watched it in a very long time, but there's a big payoff, right? But let's say you hate your partner and you cannot change them though. You are assigned with them, you are given them. You could drag them everywhere you go, reluctantly, dead weight, right? You could make snide, snarky comments and remarks to them the whole time. You could punch them in the face as you go. Like, you could do that. But getting through those obstacles is going to be so tiring and so difficult. And getting the reward, getting the payoff is going to be dang near impossible if you do that way. Or you could see this partner and you don't have to necessarily wish that they were in your life. You could even say, dang, I wish they weren't. But hey, I'm going to learn about you, and lean into that partner and say, hey, what made you that way? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? These are my strengths and weaknesses. Where did you even come from? Where were you formed, right? Like, we can get to know them and take them with us and work with them. And I guarantee you're going to start to appreciate that person, right? You're start to learn to love that person as you move in closer and understand their background, you understand their history, you see them from different angles, right? This is what we were talking about. That relationship to self is strengthened as you lean in closer. Where did this part of me come from? Where was it formed? What's the strength in this part of me that's not necessarily serving me anymore? What's the weakness in it? Intellectually, what's my strength and weakness over here? Like, lean into it. That's where the duo, the team, becomes unstoppable. Thank you for asking that question. Anybody else have any thoughts or have any questions about the visuals that we used earlier? This stuff is really, really important. Once you get it in your mind and you start to accomplish a goal, and it feels terrible and you think you have to quit, you think it's not going to work. Once you get all that really solidified, you're still going to feel icky. Don't get me wrong. But what's going to happen instead is you're going to be like, wait, this is how the brain works. This is how the woo works. This is quantum physics, right? Like, it's just that I am trying to calibrate some things here. I'm trying to get on a new frequency here, and I haven't quite done it yet. And it just feels really icky in my body as we do that. It's not that I suck and I'm terrible and I can never accomplish it. It's I've got to get this stuff lined up a little bit first, learn more about myself first. I know I can do it.
I have a question, Rhonda.
Yes.
So I want to hear you talk about this in the context of like the law of attraction. I don't know whether you've actually used those words before. We were just talking about having more than one goal, and I just realized, like, sitting in front of me is this magic box because I just read that Ask and It Is Given by Abraham Hicks, and I literally have like all these photos of all these things I decided that I want that I put into a box. And so like, just my question to you is like, how does like my idea about the way that that it feels to put those in the box is actually really light. Like, I just think that I'm creating more kind of like openness to allow things to come to me. Whereas the way that you're describing this process is more about like this kind of relationship and this inner journey. So I'm interested to hear what, like, the way that I've just described it and like the gap between all the difference. Yeah.
Beautiful. So Nikki just dropped it. Law of attraction, right? That's what a lot of people are talking about. And some people who are spiritual, they only describe it in law of attraction. And in a lot of religious settings, we're afraid of it. I definitely was afraid of law of attraction at first. So Nikki, I think it's the same thing, but let's bridge the gap, so to speak, as you say. If you read the Joe Dispenza book that I referenced earlier, it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. He talks about the quantum physics very specifically in the law of attraction. So here's how he describes it. Again, once you see the goal in your mind, you are collapsing matter, right? You are creating through the observer effect that potential, that reality. When you get emotionally involved, right? The love, the gratitude, the joy, whatever, right? So when you think of your magic box and you're open to it, I'm guessing you're saying there's not an emotion there, but there probably is. There's definitely a lack, right? A lack of scarcity, a lack of resistance. You're not resisting those things, right? So when Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about the law of attraction, he talks about your emotion is the magnet to the goal, right? The more you feel the emotion in your body, that vibration of love, gratitude, whatever it is, however you want to work on it, that is like a magnet that magnetizes yourself to the goal, right? So therefore, that's how we become open, going about it through our day, right? Our vibration is what allows us to be open to the goal that we're trying to create. We see it, that's outside of us, then we feel it, and that creates the magnetic field. So if we want to talk about that in terms of the model, a lot of you guys who are familiar with the life coach school work with the model, it's the same thing, right? Like the thought line would be that vision. I can see it. I believe in it. That's the thought line, right? Then we create the emotion, but we actually have to feel the emotion, not just write it on paper, right? But we feel the emotion in our body. It's magnetizing us to our goal. And when we feel that way, we organically take the actions. We organically take the steps that put us in alignment with the opportunities, right? That put us in alignment with the things that are going to open more doors for us. Now, like Nikki was saying, we might not set out and say, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to focus on the exact action steps. We might not be doing that. But when we are in alignment, when we are in that frequency, we are organically going to be able to take steps toward our goal. And we might not be having conscious thought about it, right? We're probably not, because we're embodying the goal. So for example, my artist client, when she has a thought and an idea about something, she doesn't have to say, put brush in paint, put paint on canvas, make straight lines, right? She's not thinking about it all. She's embodying who she wants to be in the world, and that naturally flows from her. Some people will call that flow state, right? It all lines up. Law of attraction, quantum physics, neuroscience, the model, faith, call it what you want, but it all lines up. And I know when we're making these diagrams and we're talking about the neuroscience, it does look like a lot of hard work, right? Like Nikki's like, but that's not just open, that's like terror barrier. You got to climb over a terror barrier, right? Just the way we talk about it makes it seem like a lot of work. But the truth is, as you lean into those emotions, as you learn to process through them, your body is going to be open to creating the frequency, the vibration that you want, right? We have about 4 minutes. And if somebody has a question, go ahead and raise your hand or just unmute yourself. But I want to give you one more analogy that I think might help, might work. Like, I want you to think about like a radio. And I personally love Garth Brooks. Anybody who knows me well enough, you know that's my favorite station, either 90s pop or Garth Brooks radio. But let's pretend this radio has a lot of frequencies. We could have rap, we could have jazz, we could have Garth Brooks radio, we could have bluegrass, right? And I want you to imagine that I'm always thinking about rap. I'm thinking about how much I don't like it, and thinking about how dumb I think it is because I can't understand the words. By the way, this is not true. There are some rap songs that I like, but we're just going with it, right? Like, let's think imagine I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm totally tuned into it in my mind, right? And I'm so mad every day. Why can't I hear the Garth Brooks songs? Why can't I hear him talk to me about or sing to me the dance? Or She's Every Woman. That's his song to me. If you know it, that's his song to me. I'm just saying. Why can't I hear that every day? And my husband's like, hey, Rhonda, change the station, like change what you're tuning into. And I'm like, no, it should just show up. I just want to hear it. And he's like, change the station. I'm like, no, I shouldn't have to change the station. I got this radio in here. I brought it here. It should play for me, right? That's what we have to start thinking about. What are we tuning into every single day? And I think that goes along with what Nikki's saying, right? That is another very real way to do it. What are we focused on? Somebody once recently said, and I'm going to butcher this, but our happiness in life, our joy in life has very little to do with the circumstances and everything to do with the focus of our life. That's the frequency, right? Call it what you will. Law of attraction, faith, vibration, the model, neuroscience, quantum physics. I'm sure there are a million other words, planting a garden, all the things. But this is what we're dealing with. These are the steps last week and this week that 99% of people will skip when they're trying to accomplish a goal. They're just going to say, hey, I want to do this in the world. Let me go try to do it. And they're going to try to implement some new habits for a day or two. And then they're going to feel terrible in their body. And they're going to think they're not cut out for it. And they're going to say, never mind, it was a terrible idea. I'm not going to do it. Then they're going to quit. And then next year in January, they're going to be like, dang, I really want to do it this year. Rinse and repeat, right? And some will get a little further than that. But it's because they're negating everything we've been talking about, this foundational stuff. All right, guys, 1 minute. Is there any last question, last thought, anything you'd like to share before we hang out today?
I have a last thought.
Yes, Kara, go for it.
Because I started it out with my comment, I'm like, I have to like tie it together at the end. So as you were talking about, and we don't necessarily have to think about the steps every time to be reaching goals that we've had in our subconscious or whatever. We haven't had to do the XYZ. I was actually writing down XYZ. This is what I'm going to do. I thought it was funny. So anyways, so for my ex, I had, and I do see that a lot, like as I'm more in alignment with myself and my goals and my subconscious thoughts, then I just focus on those things that naturally are making my situation better. But so the hang up for me is I'm trying to see, on paper, X, Y, and Z. So for my ex, just to give an example, I want to notice for X, I notice my invisible energy that I'm offering to the family as well as my husband's, and we communicate that. For Y, this is where I am. This is where I am in the goal making process from this meeting. I had thoughts of, I want to learn my spouse's strengths and weakness and my own strengths and weakness and get to know myself and do the work on, is this going to change any of what I value to have him behave the way he is? Is that really limiting me? Is that limiting my choices? No, probably not. And I can do the work on that. And then up comes Z thinking, because your brain's like, oh, great, I have a plan. Well, oh my gosh, that means there's like a limitless potential for me. And you start thinking of an additional goal. Well, you still have not yet worked on Y. So for Z, I had the thought, well, maybe I need to spend time decompressing in a better, efficient way by writing everything out or typing it all up instead of reading a book. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to think about that yet. That's way too much. And I get like overwhelmed. And I had those two thoughts, Y and Z, coinciding. And so I know I need to pace myself. So how do I just like put Z aside for a minute and be like, no, that's how I am decompressing right now, and just focus on Y, the Y component.
Good question. So I want to be really clear. I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm not saying you should not take actions. I'm not saying you can't even plan actions. You totally can, but I'm just saying that's not our foundation, right? Our foundation is who we are as a person. It's changing who we are on the inside to match the goal first. Then we will organically start to take different actions, but we'll also start to see different actions that we want to take, not because we think we have to or because we're screwed if we don't. It's because, oh, this feels in alignment with who I want to be, right? So it's different. If you want to write out your goals, or excuse me, write out your thoughts, do it. I think it's a great tool. Remember the garden analogy, the wheelbarrow and all the tools? I think writing out all your thoughts and decompressing is just a tool to do that, right? When we have the X, Y, and Z thoughts, what we're actually thinking about there is a new goal, not the actions, not the tools to nurture our current seed. It's like if we have Z thinking, like a new Z goal is what that represents, right? We're like, okay, I'm going to increase the relationship with my husband, and I'm going to get a law degree, and I'm going to gain 10 pounds of muscle, right? Like whatever it is, that would be
Oh,
Z
it's like
new goals. Yeah.
it's just like a new goal.
Yeah. So I'm
That
not
might
saying
not
don't
be
take
connected.
action. Right.
Okay.
And I'm just saying when you're starting out, focus on one goal because it's easier for the brain to focus on and learn from. So great question.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. All right, friends, homework. So if you choose to do it, spend 5 minutes a day feeling love and gratitude and come back and tell me how that goes for you. 5 minutes a day, and keep up with your work last week. And if you choose, you could do 5 minutes a day, twice a day. But I want to hear how that goes. I promise you, your body will memorize how to do that, and it will be so much easier for you to start changing your vibration when you choose very intentionally instead of letting your external circumstances dictate that from day to day. All right, friends, thanks for joining. I'll see you next week. You're so welcome. Thanks for being here. Bye, guys. You're very, very welcome.